Okay, I'm Tim Ghianni. I'm a longtime writer, now a freelancer, but I'm a longtime professional daily newspaper journalist in Middle Tennessee, and I did almost 30 some odd years of that. Not almost 34 years of that. Now I'm a full-time freelance writer, and I do have a side job here at Lipscomb University where I'm journalist in residence. Basically, I'm an advisor to the student news website, and I do teach some writing labs. It's pretty much what I do. Mostly, though, freelance writing is my job.
Kind of broad in general, but I just want you to talk a little bit about the main newspapers where you worked and just give like a brief explanation of the differences or kind of the general experience at each place.
Okay. The main papers I've worked at three full time. I've worked at three papers. I worked at the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle, which is the Tennessee's oldest newspaper. I was there for almost 14 years, starting in 1974. I started out as a prep high school sports writer, then I was assistant sports editor, then I was sports editor. Then I was, excuse me, I was promoted to, I went from being the sports editor to being the special projects editor, no, assistant city editor, then special projects editor, then associate editor. So I had all these different experiences. Their associate editor was basically in charge of putting out the paper, because it was a morning paper, and I was in charge of the paper. Most of my experience there, and it was a wide-ranging experience, which I liked a lot. I did almost everything you could do there, did special projects and everything else. I almost always was in charge of the Sunday newspaper, which was our big paper, and we got up to, it was a small town, we got up to 24,000 circulation then, which has not been matched since. They've gone down since then. So we were kind of there at the peak. And it was not because of me, it was because of the people together, all of us together doing just a prize-winning product. It was a good paper. From there, I went to the Nashville Banner. They actually hired me to go to the Banner. They created a job for me, which was nice, very flattering. It was time for me to leave the Clarksville paper. I loved it there. It was time for me to leave because my boss was not going to leave anytime soon, and I was associate editor, and I wasn't going to become editor. I knew that, and that was fine, because she was a good editor. So it was time for me to move on. And so the managing editor at the Banner and I had known each other for a while, so he created a job for me, and I was brought in as night city editor, which they did not have. And the Banner was an afternoon newspaper, the Nashville Banner. It's no longer in existence, but it was an afternoon newspaper. And my first job there was I had a staff. I had a nighttime cops reporter, a nighttime government reporter. I had a nighttime general assignment reporter. And usually I would have a photographer that rotated on duty, and we would be providing enough news stories during the night so that when they came in the morning to start putting the paper together, because it had to be out by 10:30, I think was the first edition in the mornings, we had copy already ready for them. So I was there. I did that for, I think, only about 8 months. I enjoyed it a lot. A lot of violent cops type stories I was involved in there, but it was an enjoyable experience. And then I was promoted to state editor, which was, you've heard of city editor. Everybody hears of city editors in newspapers, but I don't know if it works this way anymore. In fact, it doesn't here in Nashville. But they had a state editor also. And the state editor was in charge of news outside metropolitan Nashville, cops, courts, whatever, lawsuits, government, whatever, plus in charge of the coverage of the legislature and the government here in Tennessee, plus in charge of the coverage of the national politics. I went to Washington and hired a group of people, a news group that had people that worked for me. They were like jobbers. They worked for something called States News, but they worked for me to cover the national government, so that I had to go up to Washington some to deal with them. And that was during the first, we were at the Banner, was the first paper to endorse Bill Clinton for president, and that's because the publisher was a friend of Clinton's. But so I had to get, that's why we went ahead and bolstered up our Washington presence instead of relying on wire. And it was actually a pretty good experience. We did some good stuff. So, and again, it did entail some travel to Washington, but mostly just having them come to see me. But I had reporters. So the state desk was about 15 people that actually worked in-house. And they were covering the news, breaking news, cops news, whatever was happening in the morning. And then then I had the people in the legislature. I had 3 people at this working the state government, the legislative people, and the governor, and all that stuff. And then I had the more or less freelancers. They weren't freelancers. The folks who worked for us on a contract basis out of Washington with States News. I had 2 people there, and then I had stringers all around the state. Mostly, a lot of them were radio news people who would call in tips to my reporters, and I probably had at one point maybe 40 stringers who would be, so that they would call us or we would call them if we heard something happening in their town. That job, that was state editor, that job I started coming in to work at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, and basically was getting the news report together from outside. At 5 o'clock on a day that I slept in, I would get up at 3 o'clock or 3:15, and then we'd be getting the state stuff together so that I would be ready for the first budget meeting, which is the meeting where you planned what was going to appear in that day's paper. I'd be ready by, I think it was either 5:30 or 6. It's been a long time ago now, in the morning, but we would plan out that day's newspaper. I think it was 6. And generally that's where everybody sits, the business editor, the city editor, state editor, the features editor or entertainment editor, and the graphics people and the chief photographer and the managing editor sitting together in a meeting and talking out what was going to appear in that day's newspaper in the first edition. We also had a meeting after that to prepare for the second edition. Generally, during my time there at the Banner, if Tony Kessler, who was the boss, he was the managing editor, he's the one who hired me, if he was not available, then and I had different jobs at the Banner, but I would be the one who ran the meetings. I was the number 2. I was just because I was there, I guess, but also because I think I knew what I was doing. But I ran the meetings. If Tony wasn't there, and I was most vocal, and I got my people the best play, I think, in general. So I did that at the Banner for about 10 years until the Banner folded. I'm going to go back on some other things here in a minute, but I did that until the Banner folded in 1998, in February of 1998, which is almost 10 years to the day since I started there. And I guess it was, 10 years more or less. That's not 10 years to the day. But it was about 10 years I was there, and then they folded. Actually, Ghianni, the parent of the Tennessean, purchased the Banner from the people who owned it. It was a locally owned newspaper in a joint operating agreement. It was in the same building. Tennessean bought the Banner and, of course, just closed it and combined our circulation with theirs. At that point, I was in the middle of an adoption of my second child in Romania, and and my home study. There's a lot of the people just left the business. I really couldn't afford to, or left town. Recruiters came in to hire people to go elsewhere, but I really couldn't afford to leave Nashville. We'd already had our home study done in Nashville for our second adoption in Romania, my son, and we were in the middle, and we had health benefits and all that had already been approved. So I really needed, it wouldn't have been necessary. I mean, I could have gone through it again if I moved elsewhere, but it was really more important, easier for me to try to get hired at the Tennessean, which I was. There were 20 of us out of the 100 in the newsroom, 20 of us were hired by the Tennessean, and I was hired as a night copy editor. Not necessarily the job that I wanted, but it was the job that they had. For about a year I did that, and I worked nights, which was not a good thing because I wasn't around my family. But it was a job, and it was, and I always get fun. I always had fun creating good journalism, so I enjoyed it. But it kept me working till about 2 every morning, and I'd already done that for 10 years or more at the Clarksville paper, so I didn't really want to work nights all the time. Then I was promoted. I applied to become entertainment editor, which in Nashville is an important job because it's a lot of news content also from the country music industry and the music industry. And I did that for about 6 years, where I had an arts writer, a theater writer, a gossip columnist, and 2 country music reporters, I think, and that's right. The arts writer also wrote Symphony. So basically, and then I had stringers again who would cover things, review things for me. And so I had that group, and I did that. I enjoyed that pretty well. And then I moved from that position to senior entertainment writer, which I trained my own replacement in that case, and I became senior entertainment writer, which I wrote about basically what it says. I was using my writing skills to write about entertainers, and I got to be, but I'd been doing that even when I was entertainment editor. I liked talking, and I liked writing. That's always been my favorite thing. So I did senior entertainment writer for a couple of years, and then they made me senior features because the economy started changing. They were paring down the staff, the entertainment staff. They were paring down, and so they moved me. So I was senior features writer, which meant I was in both, all the, not just the entertainment department, but the features department too. The basically a longer form story if they needed it. I was doing those. And then though, and I don't want to be negative here, so I've got to be careful. The economy really hit the newspaper industry hard, and they started cutting positions. I was moved to be night cops writer, nighttime cops and cops reporter. Basically, heck, I don't work for them anymore. Basically, it was a way to, the way I interpreted it, it was a way for them to try to get me to leave. I was a senior person there. There were many of us that happened. We were shifted around. Basically, I don't know this. Nobody ever told me this. But my sense was that they were trying to get me to leave. So I did. But basically, I held on for a long time. I didn't mind doing the job. My best friend, not my best friend, one of my best friends who I started in the business with was actually my boss. He was the night editor, and I was the night reporter, the only reporter on at night at the Tennessean. And it was, again, covering cops, and I'd actually always enjoyed covering cops, so I didn't mind it. I went out on vice raids and stuff like that. I'd done that forever. I'd done that in Clarksville, and so it was not bad, but I was not around my family. I spent almost a year then that I didn't see my kids because I was going to work. I was working Monday through Friday nights? No, Tuesday through Saturday nights. And so I really was not seeing my children much at all. And I mean, I would see them, I'd get up in the morning before they went to school, but that would have been after I'd only had maybe 2 hours sleep, and I'd be gone by the time they got home. So I didn't like that too much. But I had a job. A lot of people didn't. So, but then I also knew that rather than leave, I held on. I had a gut instinct that there would be, since the economy was getting so bad and newspapers were starting to diminish in size, including the Tennessean, that I would be offered a buyout. I'd heard of these things, and nothing had happened there. So I was. They called a general staff meeting together, and they just offered buyouts to anybody who wanted to apply. I applied, and there were like 60 people who applied for buyouts, which shows the atmosphere there at the time, because there were only 20 buyouts available. And I did get one, as did a lot of senior people at the Tennessean. People who had been there forever, legendary sports columnist, one of their best editors. They left at the same time. We were kind of the first. We were laughingly refer to ourselves as the first graduating class, because we didn't get full. We didn't get paid for long. A buyout gave you a short cushion, including benefits where you could start doing other things.